The human world was a symphony of bland sensations to Maeve, a quiet hell she had chosen for a century of respite. For 50 mortal years, she had played her part as the enigmatic, slightly odd wife to Thomas, a man whose fleeting life was a mere blink in her long existence. She had muted her glamour, softened her sharp edges, and learned to brew his bitter coffee, all for the promise of peace away from the vicious politics of the Unseelie Court. She had given him her vow, a binding thread of magic he could not comprehend, and in return, he had offered her a simple human love, or so she had believed. Today was their renewal ceremony, a foolish human tradition she had indulged to make him happy. Standing before the mirror in her secluded cottage on the edge of the ancient woods, she felt a familiar power stir. The air grew cold, and the scent of ozone and damp earth heralded a messenger. A sleek, shadowy raven landed on her windowsill, its eyes glowing like embers. It dropped a single perfect pearl at her feet, a tear from a heartbroken Selkie, a token Thomas had gifted to his young mistress in the village. With the pearl came the knowledge, imprinted in her mind by the raven's magic. Images of her husband's laughter, his human hands on another, his whispered promises he had sworn only to her. A cold, ancient fury settled in Maeve's bones, a feeling far more familiar than the warmth of human affection. The mortal mask she wore for 50 years shattered. She walked to a carved oak chest that had not been opened in decades. Inside lay not a white gown, but the regalia of the Unseelie Queen. The fabric was the black of a starless night, woven from trapped shadows and spun spider silk. She dressed slowly, each piece a reclamation of her true self. The gown clung to her like a second skin, and the crown, a delicate circlet of twisted thorn and obsidian, rested upon her brow. Lastly, she drew forth the veil. It was not mere cloth, but a living mist of darkness, whispering with the voices of forgotten things. As she pinned it over her face, her human cottage seemed to shrink and warp, the walls becoming the gnarled trunks of ancient trees, the floor transforming into a carpet of moss and cold stone. She was no longer Maeve, the quiet wife. She was the queen of the Unseelie, and a subject of her court had broken their most sacred law. The vow he had broken was not a human contract. It was a covenant with the very land she ruled, and the land itself would demand its price. The clearing in the ancient woods was filled with the soft, golden light of late afternoon and the cheerful chatter of 24 villagers. Thomas stood nervously under the arch of intertwined oak branches, his heart fluttering with a mixture of love and guilt. He had convinced himself his indiscretion was a meaningless fling, a final taste of youth before reaffirming his life with his serene, mysterious Maeve. He adjusted his simple suit, his eyes darting towards the path, expecting to see her approach in white, a vision of forgiveness. A hush fell over the gathering. The birds stopped singing. The light dimmed, as if a cloud had passed over the sun, yet the sky was clear. From the deep shadows between the trees, a figure emerged. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. It was Maeve, but not their Maeve. She was a specter of midnight and majesty, clad in a gown of impossible black, a veil of swirling shadow obscuring her features. The air grew heavy and cold, and the scent of loam and frost choked out the summer flowers. Thomas's smile faltered, his blood turning to ice in his veins. This was not the woman he had married. Thomas took an involuntary step back as Maeve glided to a stop before him. The jovial officiant, a kindly old man from the village, stammered and fell silent, his script forgotten. The guests were statues, caught between confusion and a primal, bone-deep fear. "Maeve," Thomas whispered, his voice cracking. "What is this? What are you wearing?" He reached out a trembling hand, a gesture meant to be comforting, to bridge the terrifying gap she had created. It was the same hand that had caressed another woman's face. Maeve did not take it. She stood immobile, a queen holding court. Her voice, when she spoke, was not the soft, melodic tone he knew. It was the sound of cracking ice and rustling leaves, a voice that held the weight of centuries. "Thomas, mortal man," she intoned, the words echoing unnaturally in the silent clearing. You took a vow. You swore your heart, your soul, and your fidelity to me, before the witnesses of earth and sky. You have broken that covenant. Her head tilted slightly behind the black veil. The land itself has felt your betrayal. Panic, sharp and acidic, rose in Thomas's throat. Maeve, please, whatever you think, it was nothing. A mistake, he pleaded, his eyes wide with terror as he finally began to understand that this was not a theatrical gesture, but something far more real and dangerous. The ground beneath his feet felt strangely soft, yielding. He looked down and saw the grass withering and turning black in a perfect circle around him. The villagers began to murmur in fear, some backing away towards the tree line. The Unseelie Court does not recognize mistakes, Maeve replied, her voice devoid of all human emotion. We recognize vows, we recognize power, and we recognize justice. She raised one pale hand, and the shadows around her deepened. You offered your life to me. You have defiled that offering. Now, the earth from which you came will reclaim you. It will be your bride, your keeper, and your tomb. Thomas tried to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot, as if the soil had turned to grasping mud. A single word fell from Maeve's lips. It was not a shout, but a low, resonant syllable that sounded like stone grinding against stone. The word bind hung in the air, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The ground beneath Thomas did not just soften. It opened. A yawning chasm appeared, not of rock and dirt, but of pure, hungry darkness. It smelled of deep roots, cold clay, and eternal silence. The edges of the pit were unnaturally smooth, as if the earth itself had politely parted for its queen. Thomas screamed, a raw, human sound of utter terror as he felt the solid ground vanish. He flailed, grasping at nothing as an unseen force pulled him down. He did not fall. He was drawn downward, slowly, deliberately. The black soil closed around his ankles, then his knees, like a viscous, chilling tide. The guests watched in paralyzed horror, their minds refusing to process the reality of a man being swallowed alive by the ground on his wedding day. His eyes, wide and pleading, remained locked on the veiled figure of his wife until the earth covered his chest. The soil closed over Thomas's face, silencing his final, muffled scream. The ground sealed itself, leaving no trace of the chasm, not even a seam in the grass. The circle of blackened, dead grass was the only monument to his existence. For a moment, there was absolute silence, broken only by the ragged breaths of the terrified onlookers. Then, a woman fainted, her crumpling body the only movement in the stunned crowd. Maeve lowered her hand. The deed was done. Her justice, swift and absolute, was complete. She could feel him down there, trapped in a pocket of earth she had woven, aware and conscious, feeling the immense, eternal pressure of the world above him. He would not suffocate, he would not die. He would simply be, forever. She turned her head, the black veil shifting like smoke, and surveyed the mortals. They were insects, their lives brief and insignificant. They had witnessed the power of fairy, and the memory would become a dark, whispered legend in their village for generations to come. Maeve did not look back at the sealed earth that was her husband's prison. Her work here was finished. She turned and began to walk back towards the deep woods from whence she came. As she moved, the human world began to fray at the edges. The colors of the summer day bled away, replaced by the monochrome shades of twilight. The sounds of the frightened villagers faded into a distant, muffled echo, as if she were hearing them from underwater. With each step, her form seemed to blur and shift. The powerful, terrifying queen of the Unseelie was retreating, and the quiet, unassuming mortal woman, Maeve, was being shed like a used skin. The shadowy veil dissolved into mist, and the oppressive aura of her power receded. She was simply a woman in a black dress walking into the woods, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable horror. Yet her spine was straight, and her heart was as cold and hard as the obsidian in her crown. The century of peace was over. A sharper, more familiar existence awaited. The mortal world recoiled from the clearing. The villagers fled, their minds already twisting the event into something they could barely comprehend. A sudden sinkhole, a demon, a witch's curse. The story would be told in hushed tones, never to be officially recorded. The local constable, who had been a guest, found he could not even form the words to describe what he had seen. The official record would state that Thomas had vanished under mysterious circumstances on his wedding day, and his wife, Maeve, was never seen again. Back in her cottage, Maeve stood before the same mirror. She unpinned her hair, and the dark gown seemed to drink the light from the room. There was no remorse in her reflection's eyes, only a cool, ancient satisfaction. The law had been upheld. The balance of power had been restored. A human had learned, too late, that some promises are written not on paper, but in the fabric of the world itself, and to break them is to invite a vengeance that is as eternal as the Fae themselves. A week passed in the human world. The cottage by the woods was deemed haunted and was avoided by all. Inside, it was empty of all mortal possessions. The oak chest was gone, and a palpable silence filled the rooms. Down in the dark, Thomas existed. There was no sight, no sound, only the crushing weight and the cold, damp embrace of the earth. His mind, preserved by Maeve's magic, replayed his betrayal, her terrifying transformation, and his final moments of terror on an endless, silent loop. It was a hell of perfect, unending awareness. Meanwhile, in the twilight realm of the Unseelie Court, Maeve ascended her throne of twisted roots and polished bone. Her subjects, creatures of shadow and glamour, bowed as she passed. Whispers of her judgment had already reached them. The queen had returned, and she had reminded the world of the price of an oath broken. She had not done it out of passion or heartbreak, but out of duty. Her time among the humans was a closed chapter, a brief, strange dream. Here, in the eternal gloom, she was home. Years turned into decades in the human world. The story of the Black Veilbride and the groom who was buried alive became a local ghost story, then a fading legend. The clearing in the woods was said to be cursed, a place where the grass never grew green. On the rare occasion a child dared to step on the patch of barren earth, they would claim to feel a deep, rhythmic thrumming, like a slow, trapped heartbeat. In her court, Maeve ruled on, timeless and formidable. The memory of Thomas was less than a speck of dust in the long haul of her eternity. She had not buried her husband out of spite, but as a judicial act. The black veil had never been a symbol of mourning. It was the shroud of a concluded trial, the mantle of a sovereign who had delivered a sentence. And the earth, her loyal executioner, continued to hold the guilty man in its dark, silent, and eternal embrace. Justice in the world of the Fae was not about redemption. It was about permanence. Thank you for watching this video. Kindly give us a like, comment, and share. Until next time, we love you.